Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shift Hits the Fan. This podcast just came about. We finally got the name Shift Hits the Fan because we think it's funny and it has some message behind it, right, Tony?
Yep, communication cannot be too serious.
No, cannot. We have to have some fun doing this. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about communication, specifically managers communicating with employees, employees communicating with managers, and everything that has to do with communication. And today we have a very special topic. Tony, what is our topic today?
Well, Jerry, last week we did the essence of communicating. What are the challenges that the leaders will face and the teams will face and experiencing, and we covered all of that. Then, of course, the next step is what do we do about it? What's the solution, right? And so today we're going to talk about the high-level frameworks that, leaders can use to be more effective in their communicating. As we discussed it earlier, it's all about intention anyway. And we're going to frame what's the intention that we are talking about, and very much so. And of course, after that, then probably the next podcast, if not today, we can go into some specific skills involved in being more effective that still follows the intention. Yes, that's what we're looking at.
Beautifully said, Tony. Sounds like it was scripted. It wasn't, but it sounded so perfect. It was good. So yeah, let's go back to intent. Let's get a little more serious here. So let's talk about the intent. When things happen at work, we tend to just stay away from rational and get emotional. And things might be said in a way that might not communicate what you really intended to. So it is important for you to have the right intentions before you even open your mouth, right? You need to start formulating your thoughts in the way that is going to serve the other person so that they can do a better job. So, Tony, start us off with the topic.
Yeah, the key fundamental is this, right? What is the frame of communication I always have in my head, as you said, the highest intention? And, leaders have always been trained to have the answers and to keep telling people what to do. And so much so that whenever they communicate, the first thing that comes into their mind is what I'm going to say, what I'm going to tell them, what I'm going to, get them to do. And that really can throw off the whole situation, right? So what I'm talking about now here is the two key forms of intention you can have. When I communicate, do I communicate just to tell what I know? So you become very telling-centric. Or do I communicate to discover with curiosity and no judgment what my team needs? Then you'll be asking questions, so you become question-centric. So these are the two high-level frames of mind. Of course, the underneath that is underpinned with, do I come from love or do I come from fear? Yeah. So number one, are you telling-centric? Are you questioning-centric? That's the first one, right? So can you imagine a leader coming to have a conversation with his staff, and the first thing he does is he says, so help me understand what's going on here. What do you need? It will completely put the staff in a very different situation as the leader going there. Says, okay, look, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about here, the distinction is, are you looking for a description of the territory or situation, or are you, going to just kind of force it through? Yeah. So being telling-centric or being question-centric?
Yeah. As you're saying that, before we continue, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, for example, how I am. It is totally on a different tangent, but it makes sense now that you're saying. I'm going to explain to you. The way that I'm training my daughter in terms of communicating. I have a 3.5-year-old, and the way that I'm training her is that when something goes wrong, instead of telling her, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that. This is wrong, and never do that again," I turn it into a coaching question and say, "Hey, what happened here?" And we start analyzing and say, "What should we do next time, or what should we watch out for next time?" Which takes about the same amount of time that it is to yell or to clean or to do whatever it is. But when we turn it around, we give people, and now I'm referring it to work, when we turn it into those coaching questions, as you mentioned, what happens is that people get to rewire their brains and think for the next time. So it's not about being shamed, it's about creating their own solutions so they don't have to come to the manager eventually.
Yep. And it's also asking questions with curiosity and no judgment. That's really important also, right? So that's the first part. Now, the second part is when the leader is presented with a situation by his team, right? What do people normally say when they are presented with situations? Oh, we have a problem. Now, we don't know whether it's a problem or not. And I always, tell leaders that say, look, what about first starting by saying, so what is the situation that we have? Because every situation can be either a problem situation, or it could be just a decision situation, or it could be a potential problem situation, or it's just a situation of gathering information. But why do we keep saying, oh, what's the problem that we're dealing with now? Yeah? Why don't we say, what is the situation we're looking at?
Yeah. And one of the key components of that we have a problem now is time. Leaders nowadays, they have very little time and they need to communicate as quickly and as shortly as possible so that they can end up doing everything that they need to do during the day, go have dinner with the family, and then start answering emails after 8 p.m. again. So I'm being a bit sarcastic here because that's the truth. That's what's happening. So it is very important that they put time aside for a second instead of trying to fix it right away or going into the problem, to throw that coaching question and say, what's the situation here? What is happening?
Yeah. What are we dealing with? You see, because every event, every situation really has got, 5 components involved. The first one, of course, is the situation or event. Yeah. And then the next one are 2 P's and 2 T's, right? So what are the 2 P's? There are people involved, and there's a place involved, and there are things involved, and there's a time frame involved. So every event or situation has got 2 P's and 2 T's. Yeah. Now, so if we can discover with curiosity and no judgment, so what are we dealing with here? Who are the people involved? Where is the situation? What is the time frame? When did it start? When, how long has it been? What are the things involved? Is it the machine? Is it whatever it is, right? So I always, describe situation in that framework. The E, 2P, 2T. Yeah, what is the event or situation? What's people? What's place? What's the time? And what's the things involved? Yeah. So that will help a lot in terms of, discovering what the situation is. Because sometimes people say, but what do I ask? What do I ask?
Yeah.
Ask about the people involved. Ask about the things involved. Ask about where it's happening. Ask about how long it's been happening, and then, you can go from there, really. And that's how you can ask questions a lot. Yeah. Now, a very, very important one is this also. What is our state of emotion when we are communicating with our team?
Good.
What do I mean by that? Yeah, because the fundamental rule that, as I said, I'm an NLP trained person. So the fundamental principle in NLP is that we communicate from state to state, which means we communicate from the state that we are in, and we'll communicate to the state where people are in. If we don't match them, we're going to really have a serious miscommunication. For example, when I say, what is our state of emotion when we communicate in the communication exchange? Are we indifferent? Are we engaging? Are we excited? Are we frustrated and angry? Are we curious? And that would drive the tone of the conversation and the communication. Yeah. Are we being collaborative? Are we being directive? Are we being cooperative? Are we being avoiding? Are we being competitive? Again, it's just all about that. What is my state of emotion in the communication? If we're coming from a very frustrated, angry state into the communication, our cognitive frontal cortex is shut down.
Yeah.
We just come from emotion and won't think.
And that is one key component. So to speak about how are we feeling right now and how are things going in terms of this emotional roller coaster that we are in right now. How are we feeling? Just identifying that and creating the awareness so that then you can speak about it and see if it's true or not, and then if you can shift together with a team. So that level of awareness is detrimental so that you can have a successful team.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I was doing a communication skills workshop once, and one of the skills we teach there was how to manage your emotions, i.e., the skill of anchoring a positive resourceful emotion, right? So I was going to do a demonstration of that skill. So, and it was first thing in the morning. So I asked, who wants to come up and do this? And that's, in the corporate world, nobody normally puts up their hand most of the time, right? So the guy was sitting right in front of me and he looked like he was ready. So I asked him, why don't you come? Would you like to come up and do this exercise with me? I'll demonstrate the skill. And he sat down and I forgot what I normally do ask when I have a demo subject coming in, which is the question that you said. So how are you feeling now? I didn't ask that question. So I went to the demonstration of the skill of anchoring and I realized something's not working at all. Then I said, okay, hang on a minute. Let me just step back. I'm sorry I didn't ask you this question right at the start. Let me ask you now. How are you feeling now? It's first thing in the morning. And he said, actually, my mind is not here because I had a situation with my mother this morning. She's not well. They had to send her to the hospital. I rushed over for this training. I mean, how do you work with someone with you see what I mean by the state of emotion that they are in and the mind frame they have, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't start asking. So I started by telling, right? I didn't ask, how do you feel?
Yeah.
With curiosity and no judgment. Yeah.
And as you say that, Tony, um, I hear it a lot from executives. I don't want to ask people how you're doing because I just don't care. There's so much to do that that's small talk is not in me. I'm not interested in small talk because I have a lot to do. And this is a perfect example what you just said about this person being in a totally different mind space. Because if you, as a leader, don't ask how your team is doing and how they're feeling, and to check in if their brain is there actively and engaged, then you're going to be repeating yourself without an end, and you're going to feel like nothing is getting done. But by you not checking in, you're not going to find out if your team is actually there, because then you need to shift them and make sure that that mental stress is away for the moment so that they can participate appropriately. So this is detrimental. Super.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I think we need to kind of park aside the idea of small talk because it is not small talk. It is big talk, right? I mean, if you're not concerned and you don't show that you care, because if you ask them how they feel, right, you are showing that you care.
Yeah.
So, when you get very telling centric, you never think about all these things to ask, you see? Yeah. So, it's put in my mind all the time when I meet with people, even new people, like you just, how are you today, right? Yeah. How many people do that, when we greet people? I go to the gym almost every morning, right? And I say hello to people, strangers, just say, hello, how are you? Good morning, you know? Uh, Make it a habit. It's got to be coming naturally. So that's what I meant by setting the high level frames of communicating. Yeah. The highest intention that we have. Um, One is, am I telling centric or I questioning centric or asking centric? Asking with curiosity and no judgment, basically.
Yeah.
And then, defining the situation as a situation before saying it's a problem. Maybe sometimes, many times, in fact, you find that especially in the corporate environment, when people come up with a problem and they tell you, boss, I got a problem. And, if you are willing to ask the questions, you realize that it's not a problem at all. It's really a decision that needs to be taken. And that's the problem. That's the different problem. Yeah. And during my communication skills workshop, when I teach them the skill of questioning, I ask them to think about a situation where you have a problem and you are stuck, right? So when they come up and talk about the problem situation, and most times, I would say more than 50% of the time, it is not a problem at all. It's just a decision to be taken and they haven't thought about the decision. That's it. Yeah. And of course, the next one you said is communicating from state to state. We communicate from the state that we are in, so we must put ourselves in a positive, resourceful state in communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's not simple. You're going to say something. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, easier said than done, because how do we manage our emotions? And that's why, Jerry, that we've been through a lot of different programs that teaches us how to do that, having the mental fitness as we speak about, right? Because by default, we will always operate on autopilot because we have got negative emotions, and the terminology that we have been using is, sabotaging, right? So we have saboteurs that we call them, that put us in a negative state, and that's normal. So most times we'll be communicating for a negative state.
Yeah.
So we need to be mindful to shift that to a resourceful state when we are in communication, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was thinking of saying was that in life, many things happen to us, and we can either choose to see it one way or another way. My favorite example is the stock market. When stocks crash, many people lose money, but there's this other section of people that make a lot of money. Same event, two different outcomes. So then, when something happens to us in life, especially at work, when we get triggered or we are in these negative emotions, the question is always, what is my intent, right? What is my outcome that I want to achieve? Because regardless of how I feel, I need to get that outcome. So I can choose to do it the negative way, right? Where it impacts other people negatively, or I can go into ease and flow and solve it and make sure that the team feels valued, integrated, and not psychologically threatened. So those
Yep.
two choices are mine, right? So what is my intent at the end of the day? So this is something that I always tell managers and I explain in workshops because it's so important. Instead of just saying, I will do it my way. It's just my way and there's only one. No, it doesn't work like that, right? We work with people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you were speaking, it reminded me of what Viktor Frankl says, right? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our choice, what we can choose to be. And if we choose, without intent, then we will default to the negative state. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's really very, very important. Yeah. And you know what? The idea of asking questions is a very powerful skill that really drives a lot of people who are more innovative and more creative, because they tend to ask questions more than tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're telling, then you're not learning anything new.
No.
But if you're asking questions, you learn something new. Yeah.
And
So
people
that's the
also,
high level. Go
yeah, and
ahead.
also people engage, right? When you ask questions, you integrate people into solving the problem together, which creates buy-in, right? Instead of
Yeah.
you dictating, people are putting buy-in because now it was their idea. So now they've really got to pull through,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't want to be seen as people who have bad ideas. So you create the buy-in by integrating people. And again, it looks like you're wasting time instead of just telling people what to do. But that might look short term, but in the long term, you're actually going to be creating more time in the future because they're going to come less and less to you with the problems.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Uh, and as you spoke just now, what came across my mind was this, right? If you keep telling all the time, we know it hasn't worked too much. We know that you have to repeat a lot of things again and again and again because it was not communicated. So, it's a waste of time just telling. It's not productive, right? It's better to ask. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to be asking all the time, of course, right? There are times when everything is simple and clear. It's just an instruction. That's it, right? And a challenge I gave yesterday to a client of mine in the team, I said, think about this: when you're in a meeting with your team, be the last person to speak. How many managers can be that in a meeting with their team and be the last person to speak,
That's hard.
right?
That's hard.
Now, if the leader can just practice that, because when you are the last person to speak, of course, you're allowing your team to say everything they need to say, yeah? And all you do maybe is ask questions at the end of the day. But when you're the last to speak and you speak last, then the team feels that you have taken all of their input and they become part of that whole process of making the decision. And that's really very key.
And you have more resources to make the decisions.
Yeah, and you have tapped on the full resources of your team, right? But you come out and just tell them, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what, and how do we go ahead with this? You're not going to get more input than that. Yeah, they're not going to tell you. Yeah. So if we can all keep that high level intentions, yeah, as I said earlier, then there's a chance of then when you learn the skills of the actual skills of communicating, the skills will work.
Yeah.
But if you have the skill and you don't have that intention, it's not going to work. It's
No.
not going to work.
No. It's
Yeah.
not gonna happen. Yeah.
So then, what are the key skills that drive effective communicating then, right? Now, it's interesting today that most organizations, a lot of organizations today are saying that the leaders must also have coaching skills, isn't it? And mentoring skills. Why is that happening? Because, of course, it is underpinned by the idea that, as you and I know, as coaches, that coaches have got to really learn this really, key communicating skills.
Yeah.
Right?
We have to learn and practice and practice and practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is interesting now that the key communicating skills that are really tight and effective are coming from the coaching field. Yeah. And I come to the school of, meta coaching, and we got 7 core skills that we talk about. And I'll talk about it shortly, but what were you going to say, Jerry?
What I was going to say was but the coaching, I forgot, Tony, to be honest. I forgot. I'll come back to it. Okay. Go ahead. Keep going.
So, so the most effective communicating skills are from the coaching practice, and there are 7 core skills we talk about. Although in our practice of coaching, we've got 7 core coaching skills, we've got 8 skills for effecting change, and we've got another 40 plus advanced coaching skills. That's a lot. Yeah, so that takes years to learn. But the 7 core coaching skills are so fundamental to everyone in any communicating engagement. I'll go run through them very quickly. The first one is active listening. Ta-da! Nothing new, right?
What?
Active listening, first one. The second one is building rapport, building trust. The third one is managing emotions, managing our state as we communicate. And the fourth one is questioning skills. Now, this is questioning skills about describing the territory or situation. So one level of questioning skills, yeah? And then next level of questioning skills, we call the deep questioning skills, which is exploring the frames and meaning in the mind of the people you're engaging with. 2 very different questioning skills. We actually make a distinction between the 2. So that's 5 skills already. And the 6th and 7th skills, 6th skill is giving feedback. Giving feedback, how's that a skill? Ooh. And receiving feedback. Yeah, also key skills basically. So those are the 7 core skills basically. Yeah. Now, when I first learned this, active listening, when I first went for my coaching certification program, and we were benchmarked on all the 7 skills. So over a period of 7 days, and we were doing live coaching sessions, about 20, 30 minutes each, we were benchmarked on each of those 7 core skills has got about anywhere from 10 to 15 sub-skills. Yeah. So as we're doing a live coaching skill, there's a benchmarker sitting there and just scoring us on all the skills, all the sub-skills. And, most of the times, the first 2 coaching sessions, the required level is 2.5 score. Most of the time, we don't even hit 1 on the first coaching skill.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what's the biggest one that always fails most people or almost everyone? Active listening.
Yeah. Deep listening.
Yeah. So when I kind of had my first 2 coaching skills, coaching benchmarks were below 1, I said, how am I ever going to get to 2.5? I said to one of the benchmarkers, I said, help me out. What do I need to do? And she said to me, very simple, listen 100%. How do we listen 100%? Last week, we spoke about our minds are wandering 47% of the time.
Yeah.
How do we listen 100%? Yeah. Which means, when you look at all the sub-skills we're talking about, it's about having that eye contact, showing that you're listening by saying yes, a lot of difference. I'm not going to go into detail like
Yeah,
the sub
yeah.
skills, right? Yeah.
The,
Now, go ahead.
yeah. What I wanted to say was that as the user leaders who are watching, I'm mumbling right now. I'm sorry, guys. So as leaders that are watching and listening right now, one of the most important questions that I like to ask myself is why? Why should I do that? Right? It's always why should I attentively listen? Because at the end of the day, we want to achieve and over exceed our goals. Right? That's what we leaders like to do. We love to overachieve. We're overachievers. So we need every single little skill that is going to help us overachieve so that we can continue this momentum. So we never stop learning. We're always sharpening our tools. And one of them, as Tony mentioned, is active listening. And there are two parts. I like to describe it into two parts. You listen to what people are saying, the vocabulary that they're using, the expressions of the body language, the eye contact. You're listening to all of that, but you are also listening to the context between the lines. What is a person trying to express by saying it in a specific way or saying it in another way? Like what is really going on in there? Is it fear driving the communication? Is it joy? Is it positivity? What is driving it? Right? So that we can tackle that problem, right? So as we don't want people to be in fear. We want people to be in joy and in flow so that they can create their best work. So as leaders, it is important that we are actively, deeply listening to those little cues so that we can best help our employees so that they can succeed. And when they succeed, we will also succeed.
Yeah, yeah. And just to go into a bit more technical definition in our coaching certification, we have an operational definition for listening. And what it says is this: to actively, and you covered some of those points, to actively look at and attend to the person, collect sensory information, which is visual, auditory, and kinesthetic or feeling, and non-sensory specific terms, and accurately reflect that back to the person's responses, giving signals to encourage speaking, listen for value words, as you said. Uh, we call them meta programs, but listen to the structure of their thinking, the way they're thinking. Listen with eyes by watching the gestures, the movements, and the person's use of his or her body.
And it's not like you're trying to, like you're a detective trying to figure something out. You can do it just passively. You don't have to be working on decoding every single little thing. You just have to listen with your eyes, your ears, and even with your nose, so that you can just gather all of that information and then be able to understand it even better. So it's not about decoding it like Sherlock Holmes or anything like that. And the second point is you're not gonna get it, as Tony said, on the first run. It's like when we're going through the coachings, apprenticeships, and trainings, we don't get it right the first time. And you, as a leader, I'm sure that you didn't get it right from the first time. So it's gonna take time for you to develop this, but we all can develop this because this is not something that is genetically mutated in our genes. It's something that we can learn. It's a tool.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's listening, right? And I think we can only cover one more skill, and this is the skill of building rapport. In our coaching practice, we call it supporting, right? What is building rapport, right? It's to provide support to the person by caring for them, yeah, so that they feel cared for and believe that you are there, and so that they can trust the process and allow you to help them to be challenged, basically. Yeah. Now, whenever I talk about this skill of building rapport and building support, um, I always ask, there are four key energies that we need to put in place. And we talked about it broadly last week. We talked about psychological safety in teams. Now, when you're having a one-on-one conversation with the other person, what is the psychological safety that needs to be in place, right? And there's really four things. The first one is it safe for them or not? Have you created a space where they feel safe to be able to tell you anything you need to hear? I worked with a client once in the senior leadership team was always saying that their managers, when they communicated to the senior leadership team about events or situations happening, they seem to leave out things that are important, but which the senior leadership team did not ask about. So what's happening there? It was very serious, actually. When I got into that, they felt this was one of the most serious problems they had. And they said, they don't tell us. And when when it breaks up later on, they said, you didn't ask us. Yeah. So it would seem that they didn't feel safe enough telling them what they needed to know. So since they didn't ask, they didn't tell.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Big miscommunication problem. Yeah.
Exactly. And I wonder how much of that is really happening. And if you ask very senior leaders, even CEOs, right, their biggest challenge they face is isolation, right? Because they're not being told the things they need to hear.
Yeah.
It's because most people don't feel safe saying that, right? So the first one is safety. Now, the second one is this, and I always ask this question of my people. I said, so when your child tells you certain things about what they experience, what do you say to the child? And we say to the child, oh, don't worry about that. It's not important. It's only a small thing. Have you ever said that to the child? When we do that, you know what we're doing? We are disvalidating the child. So the question is could be one of the reasons why people don't tell, what your leader needs to hear, because they feel disvalidated most of the time. So the next time they don't tell you that. So the second key energy that needs to be in place is they feel validated. There is validity in the conversation. Yeah. The third one is respect. Now, what's the biggest challenge today we have of respect in conversations? Does this interfere with the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. So I tell people in meetings, I say, when you go into a meeting room today, what do you see on the table?
Yeah, exactly.
So I go into a meeting, I say, I don't want to see any handphone on the table.
Yeah, put all the phones away. Yeah.
Put all the phones away, yeah? Unless you're telling me that, you have something more urgent than this meeting, then why are you in this meeting? The number 4 is this, right? Do they know that you care? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that's why we say asking questions and being curious and asking their emotional state is telling them they know that you care, basically. Yeah. So the 2 key skills we talk about, active listening and building rapport, Jerry.
And the last one about caring, people might say, yeah, but I don't care about I really don't care. And that is totally fine. You don't have to care as an individual as if you are the parent. But you need to care about the performance. And you need to care about the deliverables and the outcomes that you're trying to reach. That you care about. So transmit that type of care in the questions that you ask, because it's going to come out as care anyways, right?
Yep. And you care about whether they have the resources to complete the job and to deliver the results, right? So that's where the leader needs to be really showing that they care, that, do they have the resources? Do they have the skills? Do they have the, equipment? That's where you care. Yeah. So 2 skills, 5 more to go.
Yeah. Here we go. We're going to leave it for the next episode that we're going to do. I hope this was informational for you guys, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. So have a beautiful day. Tony, thank you so much.
Thanks, Harry. Good one. Cheers.
See you.